Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Probst. I am one of the founding partners of Vanguard Benefits, but I'm also on the board and secretary of the Nonprofit Resource Hub. So thank you for joining us today. For those of you that might be here for the first time, the Nonprofit Resource Hub is an organization formed just over 5 years ago. We are an organization that is a nonprofit in its own. And we have an associate member program that's filled with for-profit organizations that pay dues in order to support our nonprofit members. So right now, the Nonprofit Resource Hub has over close to 550 nonprofit partners. Nonprofit partners join the Nonprofit Resource Hub as at no cost and can have access to all of our education, the resources, the advocacy we provide throughout the year. So we welcome everyone here today and thank you for joining us. We have a great discussion here today, and I am going to turn this back over and put on my Vanguard hat and turn it back over to Jill Krumholz, who is going to lead our discussion today. So take it away, Jill.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Nonprofit Resource Hub. I am Jill Krumholz, and I am an associate member of Nonprofit Resource Hub. I am also the CEO and founder of Talent Management Solutions, and we are an HR consulting firm, an executive search, and we work, primarily with nonprofit organizations. We are thrilled to be here today and very excited that you're joining us for this topic. All of us on this panel, and at the moment, one person is going to be a little late, and so I apologize for her in advance. But all of us on this panel have expertise, different depth and different perspective of PEOs, and we know from managing and working with our clients that PEOs are a solution, a great solution for some organizations, and not the right solution for others. And we're really here to talk about that because we know through our interactions with nonprofits that there's a lot of confusion around PEOs, and we're also going to discuss ASOs a little bit and really other HR solutions. So we're thrilled to be here, and I'm going to introduce, Ed has already introduced himself, and Ed is a benefits broker, an advisor, and we have done a lot of work together, so I'm thrilled to be here with you, Ed. Andy, I would love for you to introduce yourself. And what I will say is Andy is the founding CEO of Prestige PEO. Some of you may know him because, in fact, you may be clients, and others may want to know him going forward. So, Andy, if you would please introduce yourself.
I'm Andy Lubash. All right. I am, like Jill said, the founding partner and CEO of Prestige PEO. Our corporate headquarters is in Melville, New York, even though we are national and have offices throughout the country. I come from the benefits industry 29 years ago when I started Prestige. All right. I was an advisor, a consultant, just like Ed. But clients of mine were asking for things that were outside of what a benefits consultant did. Questions like, hey, do you have a COBRA letter, or have someone going on maternity leave, or this piece of legislation just got changed. Can I, what do I do? And so at that point, I found out that the PEO industry existed and said this would be a great service for small to mid-sized businesses, and started Prestige. Since then, I am the former chairman of the board of directors of NAPEO, which is the association that pretty much guides the PEO industry. I am also on their board of directors. I am the chairman of their legislative council. So I do know a lot of my peers and a bit about PEO. Again, my PEO only does not sell direct. I only work with advisors and consultants such as Ed, who bring a lot to the table. This is not a commercial for you, Ed, but you do bring a lot to the table as far as advice and consultative, and most importantly, objectivity. Okay, because again, I may not be the only one that he deals with, and he kind of keeps you, checks and balances, to basically say that as much. We are a relatively large PEO. We are, I say background, we're anywhere between the 10th and 15th largest PEO in the country on any given day. And then Cranes, New York, just published the largest 125 privately held companies in New York, and we're number 13. So again, for an
Thank
industry
you.
where people kind of don't know what it is, PEO, the worst branding ever. Okay. Seriously, there is size in the industry. And once, again, as this panel gets through this, once you learn about what a PEO is, a lot of times you hear, why doesn't everybody do this? Is this legal? Okay, so again, feel free to ask questions throughout. Very
Yes.
important that this is interactive. This is not a one-sided panel. No such thing as a stupid question. Okay, I don't want to ask the question because it's stupid. No, it's stupid when you don't ask it. Okay, so all right, that's a bit about me. Now that I
Thank you,
thought you out of
Andy.
the room,
Yeah.
I'll turn it back to Joe.
Good. So I will, Destiny Baker is joining us today. And again, she apologizes. She is going to be just a few minutes late. So Destiny Baker has joined us. Excuse me. She is a head of HR and administration at the YWCA in Yonkers. And she has direct experience with identifying a PEO for her organization and working through the challenges of the decision making and working with her executive director to bring on board a PEO. And so she will be a great contributor to this conversation when she comes in, to really discuss her experience and hopefully for you to learn from that experience. So as Andy just said, we would love for you to participate, to ask questions in the chat. We will have time at the end for Q&A. And so we're going to dive in. And so we will be discussing just quickly basics, and you know what? This is a very robust topic, so we probably are not going to get to everything. And I will share with you that we would love for you to reach out to any one of us on the panel through the hub, if you have questions after this. Okay, but we will be talking about the basics, about choosing the right solution, and when do you know that it's time, potentially for an external service, and what do those services look like? What are common misconceptions about PEOs? We will again talk about ASOs. We'll talk about measuring success with a PEO and also looking ahead in terms of what's happening in the world of nonprofits and the value that PEOs and other solutions can bring to you, right? So what we're attempting to do here is not be biased. We're all coming from a different perspective here. And we're really here to educate, because there's a lot to educate on this topic. So I'm going to start with, let's talk about basics. And Andy, I will ask you to start and talk to us a little bit about defining a PEO, talking a little bit about co-employment versus non-co-employment and what that means.
Okay. So again, PEO stands for Professional Employer Organization, which again doesn't describe anything about what the industry does. I don't know who branded it, but in a one-liner, what PEOs are doing is we are pooling small to mid-sized businesses, and the definition of small to mid-sized business can vary. We do have clients up to 3,000 employees. So again, but you're pooling the small to mid-sized businesses together to provide benefits and services to a small to mid-sized business that would not normally be available to that business. Okay, that is the real like a one-liner of what PEOs are doing. Okay. As we talk a little bit, I think I've spoken to a lot of what is referred to PEOs. Human resources and compliance are reasons why people look at PEOs, employee benefits, risk management, retirement plan, and so forth. The way this is accomplished and the way that the IRS has legislation where you can work with what's called a certified PEO, okay, which provides certain guarantees. And there's another organization called ESAC that sits over PEOs that provides a surety bond. But the way they look at this relationship is what's called co-employment. Okay. So again, what happens is that the business themselves or the nonprofit, they are the employer. They basically tell the employees where to go, where not to go, when to come in, who they hire, who they fire. They control them. They are their employees. Okay. The DOL and the IRS recognize the PEO as an employer for the back office, for the pooling. Okay. That's how this aggregation gets done. Okay. With regards to benefits, PEOs take on liability with regards to HR and compliance. If there's a fine or a penalty, they have to pay it. Again, because of that co-employment relationship. The same thing with a 403B or 401k program and so forth. But that co-employment does not necessarily mean that the business owner loses any control. Okay. Again, it just permits, this aggregation, this pooling to take place. And like I said, as I mentioned, there's legislation. There's also state legislation. New York has a PEO licensing act, New Jersey, and so forth. So again, but that's the basis behind how this relationship takes place.
Thank you for that, Andy. And Andy, I think as we move forward, you'll talk a little bit about the opportunity for an organization to not have a co-employment situation with a PEO. Is that correct?
Correct. But that isn't just quick. It's called ASO. You hear that terminology out there. It basically is where a PEO is providing the same services, the human resource services, the advice, the legal services, and so forth. But instead of the pooling taking place, all the benefits are at the client level. The medical benefits are at the client level. The workers' compensation is at the client level. Everything is at client level. It's really defined as pure outsourcing. Okay. You're outsourcing HR and compliance and technology, but an organization is providing one solution for that. And you find that more in larger organizations that may have scale already, but need resources in multiple states, multiple municipalities.
Thank you, Andy. And I see that Destiny is here. Okay.
Yeah.
Destiny, we introduced you, and we've started our conversation. So we're so
Okay.
pleased to have you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Ah,
So Ed,
wow.
I'm going to ask you if you would to talk a little bit from your lens in terms of explaining what you as a benefits broker and an advisor provide, and also your perspective of kind of the landscape of PEOs and so forth.
You're on mute, Ed.
Sorry about that, guys. Wouldn't be a meeting if we didn't do that once. So sure, yeah, I can kind of give you an idea of how we fit into the whole landscape of the PEO world. I think it's important to define what benefit advisors and brokers do, first of all, and who we are and who we service. Because I think that gets confused, and I like this is something I like to talk about in our organization all the time. We work for our clients. We don't work for insurance companies. We don't work for PEOs. Our job is to help our clients find the best solution for their organizations. And whether that be PEO or not PEO, that's what our job is. So I think in our world, though, I've been working with PEOs for it has to be more than 20 years now. And I think even in the brokerage landscape, you will find that at one point in my career, a lot of our colleagues and counterparts would look at PEOs as a threat or a competition to what they do. We never looked at it that way. We always looked at it as a viable solution that can help our clients. So that's really what we do. Is we try to work with a client, first determine whether they're right for a PEO. If they are right for a PEO, which one's right for them? Now, there's several ways that employers, nonprofits can find PEO solutions. They can do it directly to a company that sells PEO through direct reps. You can do it through advisors like us that work directly for our clients, or PEO brokers that all they do is market PEO. And I think where advisors like us bring the advantage is just like I said, we're going to help you determine whether you're right for a PEO first. We've heard in the past sometimes where things go a little sour with PEOs. I'll give you a common answer we get when we start to talk about PEOs. Yeah, we explored that, but PEOs that we're not right for a PEO. And then when we started to look into that and opened up the hood and looked under the hood a bit to find out why they felt that way, a lot of times we'll get an answer if they went down the road with one particular PEO, which might not have been the right fit for them. It turned out not to be a good experience for them, and then they wound up being soured on PEO as a whole. So where we come into play is we take the information that's necessary to provide PEO proposals from our clients. We do it one time, and then we bring that to the marketplace. We help find the PEOs that are the best fit for them. And then what we do is we put together a financial analysis that can analyze the costs, but then look at the services as well to make sure that these services align with what their needs are. Once that's complete, then we want them to meet with the PEOs, right? And we want to make sure that we're bridging those relationships because every PEO is different. I've heard Andy say that a million times, and I think he's already said it today. Every PEO is different. They all have different nuances. Some may be a fit for certain organizations, others might not, depending on the size, the participation, the type of industry you're in. So our job is to get them to that point so that we can help now bridge that relationship and determine whether the processes align between the two organizations. So that's pretty much what our responsibility is.
Good. Thank you, Ed. And that's a great segue into Destiny. Again, Destiny, we're thrilled to have you here, and we did introduce you. Feel free to say a little bit about yourself, but would love to hear from your perspective the trigger for your organization deciding to go with a PEO and how you facilitated that as an HR professional.
Hi, so again, my name is Destiny. I'm the Senior Administrator for HR and Compliance at the YWCA. And for us, I know a lot of people enter into PEOs for like lack of HR support and things of that nature. But for us, we kind of entered in because our organization experienced rapid growth. We secured a really large grant that kind of doubled our workforce overnight. And we were kind of pushed into larger employment status, larger employer status under ACA, which are federal guidelines. So the challenge kind of came about where, yes, we secured this really large grant, but we didn't secure funding for health insurance and things of that nature, all the things that would put us as a larger employer. We only had funding for programming. So we had some budget issues, was a really huge challenge. And we were trying to figure out what it is that we could do to meet ACA requirements and still stay within the budget. So we reached out to so many people, people like Ed. We explored traditional group plans. We explored ICRAs, several PEOs. And ultimately, we decided to go under a PEO. We were under a very tight timeline, and we had to address multiple needs at once. While I don't think that the PEO was a perfect long-term fit for the organization, I can say that I appreciate that it relieves some of the administrative duties under HR. For example, before the PEO, our HR team manually managed leaves of absences. Now, employees can work directly with our PEO when they need to take a leave of absence. And it takes a significant administrative burden to kind of process leaves, especially if we're talking things like maternity leave or, things of that nature. It's a lot on a small HR team. So I definitely think that it can be super, super helpful. Biggest lesson for me is that every organization's needs are different. So I would always say, do your research, understand your workforce, and don't assume that the solution that works for another organization will work for yours. So yeah, definitely just do your research.
So Tiffany, to Destiny, if you would, a little bit more, not to put you on the spot, but I think you just have had some great experience with this, and I think it can inform, others who are looking. So you ultimately did not have an advisor working with you, is that correct?
We had a broker, we had an advisor. The advisor is the one who kind of looked into traditional group plans. They also, like I said, spoke to us about ICRA, which is kind of like you will put a stipend into each employee's account so that they can go out and purchase their own health insurance, whatever that may be.
Okay.
But ultimately, we went with the PEO.
Ed or Andy, anything in terms of what Destiny is sharing with us and kind of the insights around that as people are navigating through PEOs?
Sure. I mean, as people are navigating through PEOs, I would say the things that you want to look for is, first off, when you're selecting a PEO, as Destiny said, like organizations that have rapid growth usually are ones that are starting to look for PEOs. I would say that as you're navigating through PEOs, be aware, be self-aware, right? Be self-aware of what your actual needs, your greatest needs are, whether they are HR needs, are you having benefit challenges? What is your greatest need? Is your, are you still doing everything through paper and you have no technology? Things like that are the things that are the most impactful when you are looking at a PEO and trying to drive down. Like everybody comes to us because they want to drive down their health insurance costs. That's just why. But that's because we're having those conversations most of the time. I mean, that's what we do. So we're having a lot of those conversations. So this is a natural solution to that. But the things that you really need to look at is what are the other needs you have? Like for us, when we're talking to somebody that's come to us because they want to reduce their health insurance costs, the conversation always goes there first. But then when they see all the other services that a PEO provides, it becomes a win-win scenario. But I think that a lot of organizations should look at it in the reverse way. You should look at what are your actual needs? What's keeping you up at night? Is it compliance? Is it HR? Is it, everything benefit administration has become too complex and you're not managing it all efficiently enough? Nonprofits are mission driven, right? So you're all doing great things in the world and you have great missions. And the last thing you want to do is being bogged down with administrative concerns that are growing. I think that's where a PEO can really fit the model for a nonprofit organization, especially a growing one, that would be worth taking a look at.
Thank you, Ed. And I will share from an HR perspective, HR consulting perspective, a lot of our clients, so we are providing tactical support. We're helping organizations to build infrastructure. We're looking at strategy, but very often they will come to us and say, okay, we're working with you, but we also need, and we know that you're not doing our administrative support, right? And the organization may in fact have multiple sites in multiple states and now have the complications of the payroll and taxes in those states. So that tends to be something that very much drives employers to look at PEOs.
Yep.
The technology piece, and a lot of PEOs, and Andy will speak to this, but a lot of the PEOs are very technology driven. They may have in fact started in technology, right? They're very technology driven and they've kind of grown. So, the PEO they have not all grown the same way. And not every PEO is right for you. And, again, Ed tends to be modest, but one of the things that Ed does, but also a broker does for you, is really help you to look at, okay, what are my needs? What are my employees' needs? How many people will we have that will opt into benefits? And what are the solutions that are best fit for you? And what are the best PEOs for you? Right. I think that what we find is that as consultants, as benefits brokers, we're really agnostic in terms of, what is the best solution for you. Andy, if you can share a little more with us in terms of as an organization, gets into a PEO, what should they expect in terms of their client experience?
Okay. It differs again among PEOs, even though, like I said, the word or the industry PEO is standard, but the PEOs that operate in the space are very, very different. We mentioned yesterday as we were chatting about this a little bit, there are PEOs that are out there that, really push everything to technology. Okay. Where, if you need something, it's going to be in a chat room. If you have a problem with an employee, instead of getting an HR business partner or an HR professional or a labor attorney on the phone, you're doing chatting. Okay. And again, some businesses really, that's fine for them. I find that especially in, younger client, younger businesses, where you get, I'm old now. So when you look at a bunch of 20-year-olds, they're okay with chatting back and forth. But this is, in my mind, still a people business. So again, then on the other side, there are businesses or PEOs that not only take care of the employer, they take care of the employees as well. Okay, so again, part of our job is to take the non-revenue generating functions off of somebody like Destiny. Okay, mentioning, HR and compliance is not a revenue generating department. So businesses and nonprofits generally will not devote resources to that area or try to get away with the bare minimum, okay, because they need to devote them elsewhere until something happens. Okay, and then they're like, how did that happen? Well, it happened because, I'm one person, okay, and I've got X number of employees, and, I haven't had the time to do this. But with a PEO, what'll happen is that really in twofold, we become that personnel down the hallway, where now all of a sudden someone's working on the employee handbook, somebody's working on, as Destiny mentioned, leave and all the different aspects of it as well, and answering employee questions. Okay, which is, again, very, very important because, lately today, what's taken place is, I said, if you turn back the clock about 5 years, 80% of businesses that would look at a PEO were really driven by benefits. Okay, benefit costs skyrocketing, decreasing. Every year the employer is increasing the deductible to offset the increase. Okay, and PEOs became an outlet because of the pooling and the large company benefits they were able to offer, or that we are able to offer. What's happened now, it's about 50-50. 50% of the calls still come driven by benefits. It's always a topic. But now 50% of the calls are driven by HR and compliance. Okay. And again, the average small to mid-sized business doesn't have a Destiny. Okay. They've got one person that's handling payroll, benefits, and HR. Okay. And right now, as you know, regulation and legislation is at an all-time high, and enforcement is at an all-time high. Okay. I've never seen in 29 years of owning Prestige more labor audits, or people showing up at a client's office, looking, with a badge. Okay. I've never seen more I-9 verifications from the Department of Homeland Security. Clients come on and I say, do you guys, verify I-9s? And more than once have I heard, is that bingo? They think it's funny. Okay. It's not funny. Those people have no sense of humor whatsoever. Okay. And the fines are there. And what also starts to happen is that then, someone will reach out to a PEO after they've been fined. It's like when I was growing up, my house got robbed, my parents put an alarm in. It happens the same way in small to mid-sized business after that takes place. So again, you know, when you're looking at PEOs, you're looking at what am I looking for as well. Okay. Am I just looking for cheap benefits? But PEOs are going to be offering more than that. Am I looking for hands-on? If I have to have a hard termination and need to terminate an employee, I don't want to do this alone. I want to have somebody here with me to make sure it's done correctly. Most of the time you do it by yourself. But again, it's that level of service. And then also, lastly, PEOs specialize in different areas. I mean, Prestige is a PEO that's more white and gray collar. We're not blue collar. Okay, but there are PEOs out there that Ed would recommend if he ended up with a blue collar client that they specialize in trucking or transportation and so forth. So again, there's a big variety, and not to suck all the air out of the room. And again, that's why, like an Ed and an advisor or a benefits consultant, someone objective that's not a direct salesperson for one entity, okay, can offer the most, like I said, objective and the best solution. And it may not be a PEO. Okay, so that's something as well.
Okay. And one of the things that Ed and I have discussed in the past, and this is true, we have worked with organizations that have unbundled from a PEO. right? Because, and I want to talk a little bit about that. When why would an organization unbundle from a PEO and go to different service providers for different things? What is that tipping point? And and really, is there and I would ask Destiny, is at what point, how do you kind of look at the ROI? How do you determine whether you continue with a PEO, whether you make some changes? Some of it is, how do you evaluate, the value for your organization from a financial standpoint and from a service standpoint? So Destiny, if you would talk a little bit about how you monitor your PEO and how you make decisions as you go forward about them.
Yeah, definitely. I can speak to that. I think, like, beyond cost savings, obviously, how an organization will kind of measure the value is success really isn't about saving money. It's about creating capacity and improving the employee experience and reducing compliance risk, which we've talked so much about. And also, what we've also talked about, determining how much time leadership and HR have gained back since going through a PEO, to focus on more strategic priorities, or just kind of like people building in a sense. The PEO kind of takes on the administrative side. So if you're getting more time back, I think that would be a great metric to kind of evaluate and see, maybe the PEO is working for me if I'm having more time to deal with employee relations, or if I'm having less compliance risk issues and fines and things of that nature. And then ultimately employee experience, right? Because we're doing this for the employees. They're the ones that's probably going to use it just as much as administration is. So is it user friendly? Are people having difficulties? Is the system always crashing, or is it not? Is it more seamless now? Which again goes back to allowing admin to kind of focus on strategic priorities. So I think that's one good way to kind of measure the value, or if it's successful, aside from just costs and savings.
Yeah. And Destiny, could you talk a little bit about PEOs relative to impacting your culture or knowing your culture? Because we know that that's really, employee well-being, what cultures, how they grow and develop, especially in the nonprofit world, is so important to an employee. So how would you say the PEO impacts, supports your culture, whether they get involved at all? We know that that PEOs work and, support employee relations issues and will give an organization direction. You can certainly, a PEO will provide employee handbooks, right, that are compliance driven. How would you describe kind of what a PEO does from a standpoint of supporting culture, just generally? And and even about recruiting and retention.
So we actually don't use it for recruiting and retention. I know you definitely can.
Yeah.
But as it impacts culture-wise, I think it's a positive impact. Especially like Andy was saying, if you have younger employees who are more tech savvy and they actually prefer being able to just, hop onto the app and pull certain things without having to go to HR. A lot of times HR is either remote or not within the same building. So this way they can just hop on their app, pull whatever information they need to pull. And with our PEO specifically, we do have a PEO that is very user friendly. I think I might have mentioned this already. There is a 1-800 number that they can call, and they don't just get AI. They actually get a service rep on the phone, whether it's leaves, HR information, they get all of that. So I think it definitely does impact the culture positively. I'm sure we haven't experienced it, but I'm sure there may be negative impacts for people who might not be so tech friendly. And if they're not, then you have that other option where you can actually get someone on the other end of the phone. So, and then just also from true culture standpoint, the thing that I like about our PEO is it comes in different languages. In our organization, we have people who are not, they may speak English a little bit, but reading English might be a little bit of a struggle for them, you can translate the whole entire thing into Spanish. So it's really good in other languages. So I think that's really great. So as it relates to culture and impact, I would say definitely more positive than any type of negative.
Thank you for that. Any thoughts around that, Andy? Anything to add?
Ugh, lots of thoughts.
Yeah.
No, again, like that's something that we always impress as well. The goal is not to interrupt the culture. Okay. Again, we have, for example, I always tell this story. This is a little bit back. It's actually it's before COVID now. It's longer. I had met with a client, was 26, 27 years old. The gentleman was in downtown Manhattan, got, funding for his tech firm, $35, $40 million. He had to hire 55, 60 employees, knew nothing about benefits. Okay. I knew nothing about like what he needed to do. And his accountant actually referred him to an advisor, a broker like Ed, and then they called us in and I went to meet him. And he calls me dude. I go down there and he's like, dude. I'm like, dude, I'm 60 years old. You're calling me dude? Okay. It's kind of funny. And back in the day also, I wore a suit and tie. And he was like, dude, you're an outcast. No one wears that anymore. And his golf shirt or whatever on. In his handbook, it says dudes and dudettes. Okay, women are dudettes, men are dudes, because he wanted to keep that culture. So, very important. You don't want to come in with this organization that goes pow. Now this is, all hard edges. Okay.
Mm.
You want to try to make sure that you keep that fun, that environment at the same time, but making sure that you do what you need to do. Okay. That's, to me, that's really, really important. And again, the culture does improve, and then I'll pass it along because what a PEO, when you're hiring somebody, okay, a lot of times you're competing with a large organization, okay. Nobody wants to go work in a cubicle farm, okay, where there's 15,000 employees. But a lot of times what they do is they do that because of benefits, because of the employee benefits that are being offered, large company benefits, multiple medical options, dental options, all the different options. And where the small to mid-sized business or the small nonprofit necessarily has one medical plan, may not have a dental plan, and they choose the larger organization. Well, they'd rather work for the small to mid-sized organization, again, whether it be for-profit or nonprofit. When there's a PEO there's a white paper actually that's on the industry's website that was done by an economist out of Washington, D.C., that talked about like profitability and retention. They end up going to work for that business because now you've mirrored that benefit. So you don't have to be just a number. You're now involved in something that means something, that's personal, something that's going to grow. Okay, so you definitely see a bit of a culture change as well, and the talent lifts up a little bit as well because you're able to offer them a bit more. So really, something that I think most PEOs recognize that you don't want to be this box, okay, that everybody has to fit into. You want to adapt to the environment, the industry, and so on.
I love that. Thank you for that story. I think that's great in terms of
Dude, I mean,
the
still,
dude,
we
right?
still have him as a
And
client, and he still calls me dude.
yeah.
It's like seriously.
And I think that, as a HR consultant, and as we are all consultants here, and Destiny uses consultants, whether it's a PEO or other consultants, we really are looking to really assimilate with and understand and respond to your culture. And that's a really important piece of really determining any relationship you're going to have with an external vendor, right? And we have found over the years that when we've done employee handbooks, it's certainly there's a portion of that that's around compliance, but a lot of it is speaking to the organization and the potential employee, right? So how do you reflect the culture of an organization? How do you create a handbook, right? And I love the fact that, Andy, you're talking about that, right? Because we really need to reflect as consultants and as PEO providers and benefits consultants, we really need to reflect and identify with the organization, and very much streamline what we do for the organization. So I love that. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Ed, you're smiling.
It's a fun topic.
It is. What else should we be looking at? And I think you were just talking about something, Andy, relative to AI, right? If we look at technology, we look at AI. How is AI impacting PEOs and what you're providing? And is it? And what should people be aware of? What should employers be aware of?
It's a buzzword, okay? It's incredible. It's everywhere. I mean, AI, you're going to get replaced by AI. Oh my God, you can get rid of all the people that work for you, okay, and become more profitable. It's overblown, and people are, I think, terrified of it at the same time. Um, this is a people business, okay? Also like nonprofit, a people business. You're not, yes, there's ways that you can make things more efficient. Okay. There's made things that maybe you could offer some, quicker response. Like right now, one of the things that we're doing is we're mining, we have a knowledge base, but we're mining all the emails that we've taken in over the last, 10, 15 years to look for, like, for example, when a question is answered, that our people have the response, that it's quicker. You know what I'm saying? That we can come back with the answer to that question because we've seen it 32,000 times. Okay. To try to make that a little bit, more efficient, with regards to audits, for example, to make sure that, payroll audits and so forth, that the accuracy is there is really important. But it still is a people business. I'll give you a perfect example of what you don't want to have happen. I travel a lot. I was in a Marriott hotel about 3 weeks ago. Okay. If you notice, by the way, when you check into a hotel, you don't necessarily see a phone there anymore. We used to have a phone that used to sit there, that phone with all the buttons, okay, that you could call the front desk. Now it's on an app. Okay. And actually, this was in Atlanta. And I needed to, my appointment was postponed until later on in the day, and I needed a late checkout. So I needed to go on the app, to chat with the front desk to ask for a late checkout. Okay, so I ask for a 4:30 checkout, and the app responds, well, the gym is open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so you should have no problem with that. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, do I look like I'm going to the gym? Okay, but that was like that's what you can't have happen. I then try to get back to the app to say I'm asking for a late checkout, and it keep asking me, well, what would you like me to help you with today? 10 or 15 minutes into this, I'm ready to throw the phone across the room. Okay, that's what AI can't be. Okay, it can't be that. You have an HR problem, you have a benefits problem, you have a risk problem. You don't want to be, in that. Like I said, there's a place for it. But I think to some extent, or a lot of extent, this buzzword is just, it's overblown to some extent. It's going to help us. It's going to help businesses grow. It's going to help businesses be more efficient. But it can't replace people in a people business. It's the same thing like blue collar. A plumber or a contractor is not going to be replaced by AI. May make them better, but it may not. It's not going to replace them.
Yeah. If I could just add to that, I think that that's spot on, as far as being, and from two different lenses. From an HR lens, right? And we talk about culture and how important it is, to culture. I think tools, resources, things streamline administrative, types of tasks. That's all great for AI, and that's still evolving. But as Andy's saying, it's never going to replace that HR to employee type of relationship that is so necessary to culture. And then from a benefits lens, I can tell you that one of the most important things, and one of the taglines, one of the things we say around here all times is benefits is personal, right? There's somebody behind that benefit. It's not just about that insurance contract or whatever it is somebody behind that. And especially when it relates to health insurance, many calls have come into this office with people that had sick children. They had a very important family crisis going on, mental health crisis, things like that. And we're in need of support, and direction to where they should get the right support. And I think that's where, although, I just sat through a presentation last week on AI in insurance brokerages and agencies, and how that, how it was stressed that if you're running an insurance agency and you're not getting on board with AI, you're going to get passed by. And I think to some degree in scaling and trying to create efficiencies within the business, that could be true. And we're always looking at that kind of stuff. But from a perspective of looking at it from a benefit lens, that person who's in the doctor's office or in a hospital or having trouble getting a prescription for that sick child does not want to deal with an AI bot to help them. So as that relates to PEO, I mean, I think all this relates to PEO, HR, culture, benefits, it's all wound within a PEO. So I don't think you will see PEOs going exclusively, AI driven when it comes to their support system. Otherwise, I think that, that organizations are more boutique in their nature, like Andy and Prestige, will pass them by.
And again, we've implemented AI talking about benefits with Ed. We have what's called Healthy, which is an app, which is an AI-based app that during open enrollment helps employees select the best benefit plan for them, based upon contribution, questions that they have. It answers questions, where if there's an emergency of some sort, it can give them some sort of advice or whatever it may be. It also can even go as far as setting up a doctor's appointment. Hey, I need to set up an appointment with Dr. Probst. Okay, it'll actually arrange that appointment. What time do you want to do it? And it'll do that for you. So it does, like I said, that's a place it fits. Okay. In other places, like I said, it doesn't. There's a lot you can do with it. You just have to make sure that it's not overdone. And yes, there are a couple of PEOs. Most of them are headquartered on the West Coast. Okay. That again, everything is pushed to technology. You don't get the face to face. Okay, but like I said, there's a segment of the population that works. Okay, and that's what they expect, and that's what they're used to. Okay, you know, they're used to texting each other back and forth like my kids are not talking to each other. You know.
So Andy, along those lines, regional versus national, from a PEO perspective, what are you seeing in terms of current PEOs, future?
There's been a lot of consolidation in the industry over the last few years. We've been involved in it as well. We've acquired PEOs and so have my peers throughout the country where you want to be in a market that, and I'll lead back to answer the question, you want to be in a market, plant your flag in a market that you're in. For example, we've had a lot of growth in California, very interesting state to deal with. It's a complete different planet.
Yes.
Okay. And as we grew, we felt it was good. It was nice to add another PEO that has been there for 25, 30 years that may have made the mistakes that we haven't even made yet, being in California for 10 or 15 years, as well. And you see a lot of PEOs that have only grown to as far as they can grow, and then they need to get onto a platform for them to continue to grow as well. They don't have the benefit programs. They don't necessarily have the technology. You're seeing that as well. Okay, so you're seeing a lot of PEOs that are moving up that ladder, okay, that have different cultures as opposed to what you may call big box. Okay, you have your large PEOs, your 5 or 6 larger PEOs, some of them publicly traded, they're national as well. Okay, but they're referred to even by some of my people in my industry or advisors. These are big box. So you get big box, okay, is I guess what it really comes down to. What you are finding now is that what started out, we were a regional PEO. Okay, that started out in, like I said, Melville, New York, like on Long Island. Now, like I said, we have offices all throughout the country, but we've been able to replicate our culture. So you're not necessarily, seeing, um, you know, you're seeing a little bit of a difference. But am I in every state that a larger PEO is? There may be some places that I don't have personnel on the ground. So they may be better suited or fit that particular client better. Okay. I don't have an office in North Dakota, but another one of these larger PEOs may have an office in North Dakota. We do have an office in Alaska, but that's okay.
And good for you. So, any questions in the chat? Anything we can answer?
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat as of right now, but I did encourage everyone to type your questions in the chat if you have any, and we can get to those.
And maybe one thing you can ask, you can answer, jump in, by the way. Pricing, talk about like bundled pricing, transparent pricing, something along those lines, because that's something that you come to me a lot with also, how PEOs price. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, so all PEOs is a great point. All PEOs are different. You have PEOs that bundle all their fees along with workers' comp, admin fees, and they kind of bundle their fees into a percentage of payroll. And through that percentage of payroll, sometimes that can be a little difficult to understand exactly what you're paying. And sometimes you're paying more than what you think you might be paying. Sometimes it does work for organizations, that model, but most part we see the per employee per month charge is that more transparent model where you're paying every employee, you're paying a set dollar amount per employee per month. You know what's included in that charge, and it's based on your contract. It shouldn't increase until the contract expires. And so you know exactly what you're paying per employee and what that includes. And I think that's more of a transparent model. Like I said, sometimes it does work. Like if you have really high employee counts, but they're lower waged employees, you might have a situation where that percentage of payroll could work better for you. But for the most part, we see and most PEOs do charge this way. We see that per employee flat fee per employee per month is much more transparent. You can understand it. And I think especially the clients that we work with, they're used to that kind of model with a lot of the other services they've been, depending on how they've accessed their benefits already. They're used to that kind of model, so it makes more sense to them. And like I said, it's definitely more transparent.
One thing to note also, especially when they're bundling, nonprofits, you do not pay federal unemployment. Okay. Make sure that the PEO, is not charging you for federal unemployment insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, because that you're exempt from that. And I see that sometimes when a nonprofit comes to me, and we do have a lot of nonprofits, and I see that they're being charged fully. I'm like, what? That shouldn't happen. So things like that you want to make note of as well. Also, when you're moving to a PEO mid-year, depending on the state, you've paid state unemployment tax though. Okay, and now it's on the first like 17,800. It's amazing how that raised up and nobody said anything to anybody. What happens is that you've paid that amount, okay, to the prior PEO or even at your level. Yeah, not with a PEO when you're looking at a PEO. Okay. New York State, as an example, does not give you credit for any state unemployment insurance tax that you've paid for up until that point. When you move to the PEO, it starts all over again. So you've got to take in that consideration that you may have to pay state unemployment tax twice. Now, most PEOs will come back and say, here, you're gonna have to spend another $7,500 on state unemployment. They'll waive some admin fee or they'll disclose it and they'll try to offset administration fee or something to let you know that. But you should be aware of that as well. Okay. Connecticut, New Jersey, they consider it a successor. There's no reset, but certain states like New York do have that. And nonprofits, again, every dollar counts. It's not like you guys can go out and raise prices. Okay. That's one of the things, every dollar is ultimately important. And to find out like the following March or April that you're paying state unemployment twice could be devastating because you didn't budget for it. But things like that you need to know. And again, that's an ed thing. Okay. But I just don't want to miss it. There's just so much to talk about. You don't want to make sure you don't omit anything that may come up.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I think to add to that, if it's okay, Jill, from a health insurance perspective, because we didn't talk about that, and we did talk about that health insurance is one of the like 50% or more of clients are
Right.
looking for health insurance solutions. I think that the important thing to note there, the time to look at PEO is not when you've had your high increase, right? I think you need to be more proactive about that, and look at it when you're in a time of stabilization, maybe, which is not very often with health insurance, but you don't want to look at it after you've gotten, depending on the size of your organization, if you're with a PEO and you just got a 60 or 70% increase, or you're with a large group employer and you got that because there's something going on in the organization from a health risk standpoint. I think it's important to look at PEOs when proactively. And I think it's important to note that when you're with a PEO, you're rated as if you were a large group. So claims experience does come into play. You are pooled with many businesses. So that helps offset what might be your own risk. But you do get rated as a large group. So going back to the AI conversation, I think PEOs have gotten really good at using tools like that to understand what the risk is that they're looking at upfront. So that has stabilized medical insurance rates for in the industry because they understand the risk even better than they've ever done before. So it's just important to note, everybody should know that you are rated as a large group. If there are health risk factors that are in your group, that could deter you, or I should say it should deter PEOs from looking at you as a good risk and wanting to accept your business.
Right. Thank you. And you know what, there are so many more questions, and I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
One of the things, Destiny, that you had talked about yesterday when we met was really around having runway and really planning, because you were in a situation where you had to make a decision very, very quickly. As a takeaway, could you share a little bit with us in terms of that and the importance of that methodical planning and research?
Yeah, definitely. Like you had mentioned, and I mentioned to you guys yesterday, we made this transition in about 30 days because we had to. But this is a major decision for any organization, big, small, but specifically and especially smaller nonprofits. So you want to be mindful, you want to do your research, like I said earlier. The more time that you have to ask questions and evaluate all of your options, the better. I really can't stress this enough. Just do your research. Like Ed was saying, know your need and do your research. It shouldn't be a one-person decision either. Talk to your staff. We did surveying, and talk to your staff, talk to your leadership team. And as a leader, kind of ask yourself, is this actually going to work for your employees and your organization? And if the answer is yes, take some time and look thoroughly through all PEOs, understand what it is, understand the benefits that you're getting, understand the cost. And then I'd also encourage organizations to work with someone who's going to evaluate your entire situation, because from our standpoint, we were considered like a mid-sized nonprofit. We really didn't know too much about PEOs. So you want to work with someone who does know, and not someone that's just going to sell you one product. And once you're working with that person, get a second opinion, work with another one, get a third, gather all your information and make a strategic decision based off of your specific needs. I think that's kind of my big takeaway.
Thank you for that. Any last minute, Ed, Andy, suggestions, most important piece of advice before we leave?
Yeah, I think we're at time, so I'll just go quick. It shouldn't be all about cost. Cost is obviously always a big determining factor. Know what you need, do an evaluation, work with somebody, an expert to help you determine what your needs are and how a PEO would best fit into helping you with that.
Thank you, Ed. Andy, of course.
Just again, I think leads on what Destiny said. Do a technology demo when you're evaluating PEOs. Look at the pricing. If you're looking at multiple PEOs, when you put the data together, try to level set. Okay, because sometimes we'll see that 3 PEOs proposals will have different wages. Okay, it'll have different numbers of people. For some reason, they don't seem to assimilate the same data the right way. So you want to make sure that you're just not looking at the bottom line, that you're kind of putting it together and analyzing. And again, something that I'm not trying to sell Ed, but this is what they do as well, to make sure that everybody has $1 million worth of wages. Everybody, so it's really comparing apples to apples. I always say references, but it's kind of funny. When I ask for references, I feel like I'm getting the 5 happy clients. Okay, when I ask vendor for references, but if you know someone else that is using that PEO, you want to find out how they're doing. And one thing that I found really important as well, and I glossed over it at the very beginning, look for the certifications, the IRS certification. If you're an IRS certified PEO, you're an ESAC certified PEO, because to get those, there are financial litmus tests. The PEO has to provide audited financial statements. They have to have a specified amount of working capital, net capital. There's a lot there. Outside accounting firms have to attest that their payroll taxes are paid. So that to me is something really important as well. Ask that question, okay? Because again, that'll give you some sort of, hey, I never heard of you guys. I don't know what a PEO is, but they may have a full financial backstop on that makes you more comfortable.
Yeah. And I would also say in terms of references, and I'm wearing my HR hat, it's really a good thing to, and I find in general to say, give me a reference of someone who's left,
Yeah.
right? Give me a reference of someone who's left. And the great reference would be, gee, Andy, you did a great job, but we have outgrown you for XYZ reason. But when I can get a reference, that really is no longer using the service, it's really helpful.
Yeah,
So,
we generally give the references, believe it or not, of clients that were acquired. Okay, that's how we do it.
right.
Somebody that
Okay.
left because they grew or whatever it is, but they may have been acquired by another company, a large
Sure.
organization, and
That's a
they,
good reason to leave,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
that was, maybe it's more open. I don't know.
Right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out to the hub and reach out to us with any questions you have. And we hope that this has been helpful today. So
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye.